For the most part of her life, which amounted to 70 years, Martha Caldwell lived her life for the welfare of her family. She raised Benjamin, the child whom she had adopted when he was 2 years old, just as if he were her own son. Everything in the universe that around her revolved around Benjamin. She gave him everything she had to give: her love, her attention, and her time. She made many sacrifices for him, including her career, her ambitions, and her social life with her friends. After her husband passed away, Martha and Benjamin developed a stronger relationship than they had ever had before, and they became companions to each other. Their possession of each other was total, and there was nothing else that could have possibly quenched their thirst for satisfaction. On that particular Tuesday, though, the day on which she walked in to see the doctor for her checkup, everything had changed. For many years, she had complete faith in the medical expertise of Dr. Elliot Sterling. When she was unwell, he was the individual who had administered medical treatment to her, and when she was going through difficult times, he was the one who had supplied her with support. On this particular day, though, he seemed to be acting out of character. Martha was able to perceive the slight tremor in his hands as he was in the process of monitoring her blood pressure. It seemed as though he was concerned with something, and as a result, he was avoiding making eye contact with her. That behavior was not at all characteristic of him. As he delivered the news to Mrs. Caldwell, he strained his voice and put on a phony smile. "Everything looks great," he said. "Your heart is strong and your lab results are perfect. You have a lot of good years ahead of you." Although the motion of her head and the sentiment that she was feeling were in harmony, there was an aspect of the way in which he communicated that was disconcerting to her. The feeling of discomfort washed over her. It was as if he was hiding something from her. Dr. Sterling approached her rather abruptly, practically in an instant, and without her being aware of it. He slid a little, folded letter inside her handbag. While she was in the process of departing, he did this. "You should make sure that you are taking care of yourself, Mrs. Caldwell," he continued, his voice soft but firm. "And keep in mind that a family is not always what it appears to be." Once she had left the room, his remarks continued to ricochet through the air, and she felt a chill run down her spine. Would you be able to explain what it is that he was talking about with it? What was the reason for his clandestine behavior when handing the note to her? While she was riding in a cab on her way back home, her thoughts continued to race. This type of conduct was completely out of character for Dr. Sterling. In the past, he had always maintained a demeanor that was professional, composed, and consoling. What is the purpose of this gathering, then? What had occurred in this situation? What had been his motivation in the first place for handing her that note? And what had motivated him to offer her that note to begin with? Martha could not shake the sensation that something was terribly wrong, and it refused to go away. Upon her arrival at her residence, she saw that Benjamin was sitting in the living room with his wife, Eleanor, and their daughter Olivia. As soon as she made her entrance, everyone cut off their conversations abruptly. Eleanor quickly hid a bundle of papers behind her back. "Mother, what was your appointment with the doctor like?" His smile was forced and lacked sincerity, and he asked the question with a tone of inquiry. "Son, there is nothing for you to be concerned about." Martha responded to the comments that she made by stating that her medical professional confirmed that she is in wonderful condition. She tried to keep her composure, but her heart was beating rapidly within her chest. Eleanor and Benjamin quickly exchanged eyes with each other. Both of them exhibited strange expressions, and they did not escape detection. What could have possibly caused them to appear so disheartened and let down? It appeared as though they were waiting for the doctor to let her know that she was dealing with a sickness of some kind. "That's a fantastic piece of news, Grandma." Her voice took on a strange, chilling quality as she uttered the name, Olivia. "This means that you still have a significant amount of time to enjoy yourself." When Martha found out what had transpired, she felt a heavy sensation in the pit of her stomach. The strange behavior continued to persist despite her attempts to ignore it. That evening during dinner, the air was thick with anxiety. Benjamin hardly said a word to her at all. The only words that Eleanor spoke were single words, and Olivia avoided making eye contact with her. She finally broke the silence after a long time by posing the topic. Is there an issue of some kind? Mother, please don't. There is nothing wrong at all, Benjamin said. We are simply exhausted. He spoke far too quickly. There was a sense deep inside Martha that something was not right, and she was unable to ignore it. Throughout the span of all these years, she supplied Benjamin with a house that was full of love, made a continuous effort to provide for him financially, and looked after him. And there she was now, experiencing the feeling of being like a stranger in her own home. That evening she struggled to get some sleep. A creaking noise, for example, or a rush of wind rustling through the trees are two examples of the kinds of sounds that she would become terrified by quickly. These sounds could originate from inside the home or outside it. With her eyes open and her thoughts far away, she continued to lie there. What had occurred in this situation? What was going through Dr. Sterling's mind at that time? What could have possibly caused her family to endure such a significant transformation? Sometime about 2 o'clock in the morning, she was roused from her sleep by the sound of people talking in the kitchen. She arose and made her way toward the entrance of her bedroom, being careful to keep her movements and her voice muted and quiet, and to pay close attention to the sounds that were coming from the surrounding area. Eleanor's voice, which was low and furious, reached her ears, and she could make out the words, "The damn doctor wouldn't cooperate. I told him that she is losing her sanity, that she has periods of time when she doesn't recognize people, and that she leaves the gas running," Benjamin said, his voice tinged with fury. But he maintained that she is doing just fine. "Don't worry, my love," Eleanor murmured, trying to keep the tone of her voice level and steady. "We will seek the opinion of another physician. Somebody who will sign any necessary paperwork. In the meantime, though, what are we going to do with her?" Olivia asked with a tone of voice that was almost apathetic. Mother proceeded with the statement, "I already reserved my place at the college in the United States. I need that money right now, not in 5 years when she finally passes away from old age." Martha was struck with a sense of horror so intense that it made her blood turn cold. Is this event genuinely in progress at the moment? Was it the intention of her own family members to have her declared legally incompetent and put her to a nursing home in order to seize possession of all of the possessions that she had worked so hard to acquire? The woman found it almost beyond her ability to believe the things that she was hearing. "Take a deep breath and relax," Benjamin said to Olivia in a softer voice. "It is essential that we act quickly. If we sold the house, which is valued at over $500,000, we would be able to live a comfortable life and use the money from the sale to contribute to our living expenses." "Look," Eleanor stated in a voice that was devoid of any warmth and that seemed to have been carefully thought out, "I did not marry into this family in order to be responsible for an elderly woman who has lost her cognitive abilities. 10 years have gone by, and she is still living. I married you under the assumption that you would come into a substantial amount of money shortly. She is spending our money irresponsibly at the moment." The hands of Martha were trembling. In other words, it was her own blood and flesh, in other words, her family, who had the intents of depriving her of all of her belongings. They were filled with resentment that she had not fallen ill, and they were simmering with anger rather than being delighted that she was in good health. Her possessions were going to be taken from her, and she was going to be discarded after that. They had plans to treat her as though she did not matter in the slightest. "I am going to discuss the prospect of having her declared incapable without a medical certificate with a lawyer once I have finished eating my meal," as Benjamin mentioned. "There must be some way. I'm sure of it." Her ideas moved quickly through her brain, similar to the way a whirlwind does. She found the things that she was hearing to be absolutely unbelievable. Her own family, the family for whom she had made so many sacrifices, the family that she had cared for and loved, were conspiring to bring about her demise. They had every intention of taking her things and throwing her away as though she were trash. The words that she had taken in continued to resonate in the recesses of her mind. Benjamin and Eleanor were under the belief that she was not aware of the preparations they were making for her future, as they were having a good laugh together. To think that she had fallen for their deception was what they believed. Nevertheless, they were unaware of the fact that Martha had been keeping a secret of her own, a secret that would eventually change everything. Martha drew a deep breath in through her nose and then proceeded to exhale through her mouth. They had no hope of being able to successfully execute a stunt like that on her. At this time, the answer is no. Never at any moment. She was getting ready to launch a counterattack, and they would not be able to foretell its arrival. Martha drew a deep breath in through her nose and then proceeded to exhale through her mouth. They had no hope of being able to successfully execute a stunt like that on her. At this time, the answer is no. Never at any moment. She was getting ready to launch a counterattack, and they would not be able to foretell its arrival. That evening, Martha lay down in bed, and the thoughts that were swirling around in her head would not leave her alone. She had just overheard a lot of things, which is why she was difficult to fall asleep. As she considered how her life had come to this point, she kept her attention locked on the ceiling that was above her. She had been absolutely devoted to her family and had given every ounce of her love and attention to each and every one of them. She had made significant sacrifices for Benjamin, Eleanor, and even Olivia. Nevertheless, it appeared as though they had been exploiting her for the entire duration of their acquaintance. Her emotions of endearment for them did not seem to carry any importance at all. The only things they noticed were her wealth and her assets. The reality of the situation, which was that they did not care in the slightest about her, took her completely by surprise. They were only interested in the benefits that they stood to earn from her. The next morning, as soon as she awoke, she made it a point to walk about with the utmost discretion that she was capable of. Her objective was to keep her plans hidden from everyone else. Secrecy was of utmost importance to her. She gathered together a tiny bag and double-checked to make sure that it contained the most essential items. Her medications, her identity, several changes of clothes, and the little notebook, which she had kept hidden for all of these years and which was the most important item of all. The contents of that notebook included the specifics of her secret accounts, which included a bank account located offshore with a balance of $2.2 million and 3 properties located overseas that she had not revealed to Benjamin. She had maintained this secret since she was totally positive that he felt feelings of love for her on account of the kind of person she was on the inside rather than on account of the material items she owned. Nevertheless, it was apparent at that point in time that he had never had any true feelings of love for her. During all of this time, he was waiting for the moment when she would pass away so that he could collect the legacy that he was convinced belonged to him. As she was packed her suitcases, her heart hammered rapidly in her chest. The danger that leaving the house would present was something that she was cognizant of. Before long, they will most likely realize that there is no longer any sign of her. On the other hand, Martha was not going to stand by idly and let them take all of her belongings without putting up a fight. Her plan was to best them at their own game. She did not disclose the location to which she was traveling to anyone. She left a note on the kitchen table that simply read, "Gone to run some errands. I will return at a later time." That is all she did. Martha. The cab in which Martha was riding was headed to the nearest bank. She made sure that her accounts were still protected and that she took some cash from the ATM. It was as though she were only an observer in her own life, watching the cab ride as it played out. It had been years since she had been in charge for the first time. The moment that she arrived at the financial institution, she approached the teller, who cast her a look that was brimming with curiosity, and then proceeded to ask whether she would be permitted to withdraw $5,000 in paper currency. "Ma'am," the teller questioned, "are you absolutely sure about this? That is an enormous sum of money to be carrying around with you." "I am certain of that," Martha said. Her voice remained steadfast, and her tone was resolute. "I have some personal matters to take care of." Once the transaction had been completed, Martha left the bank and grabbed a different cab. She traveled to the Grand Imperial Hotel in that cab. She was cognizant of the fact that she had the ability to stay hidden in that particular place while she pondered over the decision of what to do in the next step. The ambience of the hotel was tranquil, elegant, and inviting. It provided her with everything that she needed: privacy, protection, and peace of mind. When she checked in using a pseudonym, she had a sense of well-being wash over her as she walked into the suite. A substantial bed, a roomy living area, and a breathtaking view of the city were all features of the hotel room, which was designed in a stylish manner. Martha took a long, deep breath, letting out a sigh of relief. It had been a long time since she had allowed herself to do that. For the first time in a long time, she was doing something just for herself, and she had eluded capture. Following a long day of arranging and collecting her thoughts, Martha reached out to her attorney, Dr. Graham Montgomery, that evening. "I have already begun working on your case," he said as soon as he responded to the greeting. "Caldwell, I hired a private investigator to study the activities of you and your family. There is a great deal for us to work with." At that very second, her pulse started to race. "You found out about what exactly?" "I do not have the ability to find the particular thing that you are seeking." Montgomery paused before continuing. "Mrs. They have been inhabited ever while the Caldwells have been around. In an effort to find a doctor who will classify you as mentally incompetent, Benjamin has been making contact with various medical professionals. Eleanor has begun getting rid of some of your personal belongings, including your jewelry. Olivia, in contrast, has been spreading the word to her contacts that you are experiencing dementia, and she has been taking out loans with the pretense that the money will be put toward your medical treatment." Martha was struck with a sense of horror so intense that it made her blood turn cold. She had never encountered any circumstances that would give her reason to distrust them. They were those who were related to her via blood. At this particular juncture in time, they were putting forth the effort to inflict damage on her good name. Her knuckles had turned absolutely white as a result of the way she was gripping the telephone with such force. "I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right," she said in a subdued voice. "I was aware that there was no way that they could love me." Dr. Montgomery spoke in a soft voice, remaining calm and instilling confidence. "You do not have to go through this experience alone, Mrs. Caldwell. We are definitely going to make sure that they are held responsible for the actions that they have committed. Nevertheless, it is of utmost importance that we act quickly. They have already started putting the necessary elements together in order to carry out their next line of action." For a few moments, Martha stayed quiet. Her thoughts went round and round in her head like a merry-go-round. In the past, she had been naive and gullible to a degree that was very extraordinary. Nevertheless, she was now obliged to defend herself. She was well aware that it was time to take full responsibility for her life once and for all. Her voice did not waver as she declared, "I am ready." Over the course of the days that followed, Martha continued to prepare the materials. She contacted her financial specialists in various countries to verify that her accounts were both activated and secure. Her goal in hiring a private investigator was to obtain evidence of the wrongdoings that had been committed by members of her family. She started compiling a list of all the things that she needed to do: submit legal documents, obtain the best lawyer in the city, and prepare for what was ahead. She understood that the mission that lay ahead of her would not be easy, but she was ready for it nevertheless. Her family members, on the other hand, were unaware of her current location. It was left to Benjamin, Eleanor, and Olivia to conjecture about the reason for Martha's continued absence from her home. Her phone was called, and they tried to reach her by sending her texts, but those were ignored. The concept that they were making an effort to dupe her into thinking that she was becoming insane caused her to feel queasy. They were under the delusion that they had an advantage where she was concerned, but they were proven to be incorrect. Early in the morning on the fourth day after her courageous escape from jail, Martha came to a bold conclusion. She was on the verge of approaching her family and speaking with them in person about the circumstances. She was cognizant of the fact that the time had come to address them, but she was not certain about either the manner in which she should do it or the timing of it. The length of time that the deception had been going on was longer than what was considered acceptable. That afternoon, Martha made the decision to go to an office that catered to people interested in real estate. She arrived at the idea that it was very necessary for her to make a statement after browsing through a number of luxury properties online. First, she would demonstrate to her own family that she was capable of doing more than they had previously assumed in order to reclaim authority over her own life. They had made the grave error of underestimating her. She was not a helpless senior citizen. Rick, who was employed as a real estate agent, was the person that she went to the office to speak with. The moment that Martha was visiting the second residence, she became aware of a voice that she recognized coming from the door. He had already brought her to visit a handful of places. "Mother!" The walls of the lobby reverberated with the sound of Benjamin's voice. "I am an artificial intelligence system that was made by a team of innovators working for Amazon. I am unable to locate the particular item that you are searching for." With her heart pounding in her chest, Martha whirled around. Benjamin, Olivia, and Eleanor were standing in the entranceway. They appeared to be deer that had been startled while they were in the headlights of a car. They were completely oblivious to the fact that the events that were about to take place were going to be quite unexpected. "Hello, family," Martha said, greeting her family with a voice that was both collected and firm. "It would appear that all of us are here for the same reason." Benjamin sputtered out a question asking, "Mother, what are you doing here? We have to have a conversation." Her eyes remained unwavering as Martha came up to her and the others. "There is nothing else that we need to talk about, Benjamin. That is my opinion. I know about the schemes that you have been putting into action. I am aware of the documents you have been fabricating, the false medical records, and the falsehoods you have been spreading." Rick, who was working as a real estate agent, directed a glance full of confusion toward the two individuals and then looked back and forth between them. "I am not able to find the particular item that you are searching for. Mrs. Caldwell, do you know any of these people?" "I regret to say that the answer is indeed yes," she told him with a penetrating glance. "The individuals that make up my family are these. For the most part it is what I believed, that is, until just a short while ago." As Eleanor attempted to sidestep the topic, her voice trembled. "There has been a misunderstanding, Mother, but everything will be sorted out. Please, we simply need to talk." Martha maintained a completely calm demeanor as she communicated with a tone of voice that exuded self-confidence. "There is nothing more for us to discuss, Eleanor. For a long time you have been making plans to pillage and bring about my destruction. You think that I am just an old woman who you can ignore, but you are in error. There is a secret that I have been keeping from all of you." Benjamin's face became a noticeable shade of pale. "What is this enigma that you are keeping from me?" he asked. "I do not have the ability to find the particular product that you are seeking. The secret that I am holding onto is even more astounding than you could have ever dreamed possible," Martha said, her lips curling into a slight smile as she felt the change in power. She took a little break and gave her audience time to thoroughly absorb her comments. The moment of truth had eventually come. "The secret that I am holding onto is even more astounding than you could have ever dreamed possible," Martha said, her lips curling into a slight smile as she felt the change in power. The atmosphere in the room was thick with anxiety. Benjamin's face became a shade paler, and Eleanor's lips started to tremble, but not one of them spoke a single word. In stark contrast, Olivia remained in the back, her eyes wide open in disbelief. She had never seen her grandmother act like this before. Her grandmother had never been so collected, steadfast, and resolute. As Rick, the real estate agent, was standing there attempting to figure out what was going on, Martha turned her attention to him. Her voice was strong and resolute as she asked him if he would mind speaking with her for a moment. Rick remained composed as he gave a nod of his head. Not only was he courteous, but he also seemed to be feeling out of place. "Indeed, I should have known it was Mrs. Caldwell. Don't rush, take your time." It wasn't until Martha and the others were making their way across the room to the other side that the reality of their circumstances started to dawn on her. She had at long last made the decision to defend herself. She was reasserting control over her own life once more. The house and money were not the only factors involved. Recovering her feeling of self-worth was also important. "Rick, I need you to check that everything here is documented correctly," she added, lowering her voice. "The events that just occurred are the first steps toward the opening of a new chapter. If it is not too much to ask, I would want to make a request that this moment be documented because I will need it at a later time." Rick paused for a brief moment in time before saying anything at all. "Do you really believe that to be true? It would seem that there are some serious problems that are impacting the family unit." Martha remained steadfast in her gaze throughout the entire exchange, responding, "I am absolutely sure of that. For much too long I have been a fool." I will not allow them to take anything away from me. Not at this time. Rick acknowledged the gravity of the situation with a nod of his head. As Martha turned back to face her family, he quickly slipped away from the gathering in order to make a few discreet notes on his phone. Mother, we need to sit down and talk. This has gone too far, Benjamin responded, his voice trembling a little at this point. It was his nature to be the one of the family who took decisions and was strong, but he was clearly disturbed up now. With her arms folded and her expression turning stern, Martha gave the image of someone who was not about to back down. Benjamin, there is nothing that we need to talk about, that's what I mean. You have had a great deal of time to talk to each other, to make plans, and to lie to me. But now it is my turn. Eleanor advanced a step forward while her eyes were filled with desperation. Mom, please listen to me. I think that there is something that you are misunderstanding about this situation. We have always looked out for you in the past, and we are just extremely grateful for everything that you have done for us in the past. We are simply making sure that you are receiving wonderful treatment. Did you remember to tend to that? Martha said the same thing once more, her voice rising with anger as she did so. Are you referring to the aggregate value of everything that I possess? You truly thought that I would not discover the schemes that you have been carrying out behind my back while lying to me, didn't you? Because I am so advanced in age and so physically weakened, you thought that I would be unable to comprehend this. I am not able to find the particular item that you are searching for. Eleanor found herself on the verge of crying, but those were not tears of penitence that she was shedding. They were weeping as a result of the anger, fear, and frustration they were experiencing. Please, Mom. This is farther than we had originally expected for things to go. All we need is money. Benjamin lost his job, his employment, which is the source of our income, and we are in debt. The house, your savings, and other assets are the only things that are left to us. Martha was overcome with a sudden wave of bitterness that enveloped her chest. Do you honestly believe that I am ignorant of the debt that you owe me, Benjamin? She asked. She turned to face him abruptly and with a stern expression. I am fully aware of the amount of money that you owe me, as well as the gambling problems that you have had. However, that does not justify the actions that you have taken against me. She approached Olivia, who had been silent and motionless throughout the entire ordeal. Olivia's gaze shifted back and forth between her parents and grandmother. And you too, Olivia, she said. You have been a party to this as well. I have saw them as they were plotting my demise. You are well aware of the lies they have spoken and the schemes they have concocted. You have let them deceive you into believing that I am the person who is responsible for the issue. I am not the cause of the problem. I am who I am. Her face became completely flushed with humiliation, and she recoiled in a display of flinching. She had been doing everything that she could to escape the stare of her grandma, but now she realized that she was unable to look away from it. She mumbled, her voice shaking. I never had any intention of letting this happen. It has progressed to that point, Olivia, Martha said softly, her voice slicing through the silence. Oh, but it has, she continued. Furthermore, it is essential for you to recognize that you bear a share of the responsibility for all of this. You knew what was going on in the situation. You were a member of the group in question. You remained silent as they were coming up with a plan to commit fraud on me and cause the destruction of my life. Despite the trembling of Olivia's lip, she did not say anything at all and stayed silent throughout. The sense of guilt was an intolerable weight that he had to carry. Taking a deep breath, Martha inhaled deeply. Her gaze shifted from Olivia to Benjamin and then to Eleanor. I am aware of everything that has ever occurred in the world. I have knowledge of the fake medical appointments, the false documents, and the money that was stolen. Everything has been documented. You are finally due to pay for the crimes that you have done. Benjamin did everything he could to maintain his composure, but as soon as he began speaking, his voice started to shake. Please, Mom, do not do this. We are a single family. As a team, we have persevered through a significant amount of hardship. You are not allowed to simply do that. You cannot simply obliterate us like this. She remained just as determined as she had been before, but her expression turned much more compassionate. Benjamin, our downfall is already a direct result of actions that you have taken. The family that we used to have no longer exists because of you. You shattered my heart, and now it is time for you to deal with the repercussions. She felt her phone vibrating in her pocket at that same moment. Martha directed her gaze toward the television after removing it from its place. Dr. Montgomery was the one who sent the message that arrived. Each and every object is in its proper location. The person who is carrying out the investigation has gathered further evidence. We are prepared to proceed. It felt as though the burden that she had been burdened with in her chest had been lifted off of her. This is how things turned out. At this point in time, there was no possibility of turning back. She was no longer willing to put up with being a victim. She had reached her limit in terms of being manipulated and taken advantage of by other people. She had the power within her grasp, and the moment had arrived for her to take back control of her own life. She whispered the names Benjamin, Eleanor, Olivia, keeping her voice as clear and steady as possible. I can guarantee you that I will use all of the authority at my disposal to make sure that you never lay a hand on me again. I have already commenced, even though I have not yet initiated the procedure. All of the manipulation, deception, and false statements that you have made will be revealed. When the truth finally comes to light, you will be required to take responsibility for every action that you have committed. Benjamin was unable to get a word in edgewise because Martha did not give him the chance to speak. He had his mouth open as if he were on the verge of arguing. Approached Rick, the individual who was selling her the property, to speak with him. Rick, I am going to need you to verify that everything has been documented, including this. I am not leaving until everything has been documented. It is of utmost importance that the illicit acts that my family has carried out be revealed to the public eye. Rick gave a nod of assent, feeling a sense of responsibility that had replaced his previous sentiments of discomfort. We will check that all of the items are in the appropriate order, Mrs. Caldwell. I understand your concerns. She cast her gaze back toward her family with a heavy heart but a resolute attitude. Benjamin, everything is finished now. Everything is done and dusted. It is finished, Eleanor. It is finished, Olivia. It is possible that you thought that you were smarter than me. It may have occurred to you that you could take anything you want from me, but I am not going to go down without putting up a fight. Eleanor, Benjamin, everything is settled now. Everything is concluded now, Olivia. Everything is over now. You may have thought that you were smarter than me, but I am not going to go down without a struggle, and you may take anything you want from me. The silence that filled the room was so profound that it was almost oppressive. The force of the words that Martha had spoken seemed to linger in the air after she had finished speaking. It had only just started to become apparent to Benjamin, Eleanor, and Olivia what the situation truly was. They were in a state of shock and disbelief. They seemed to be frozen in place. She possessed abilities and determination that were not to be underestimated, and neither was her capacity for love. They had failed to recognize all of these qualities. Martha took a stand with her posture unwavering and her position secure. The anger that was beginning to bubble to the surface of her family's expressions was tangible, and she could sense the tension that filled the room. However, she no longer felt fear. The anxiety that had previously imprisoned her had completely dissipated. All that was left of the worry that they could potentially be successful in their scheme to bring about her destruction was a fading memory. I am finished being your victim, she continued in a voice that remained unwavering. You will have to pay for the things that you have done. Not only to me, but to every single person who has been harmed by you during the course of your journey. Benjamin held his hands tightly at his sides, clenching them into fists. He said nothing. On the other hand, Martha couldn't help but revel in the nervous energy that had taken the place of his previous arrogance. Do you genuinely think that I would sit back and watch while you stripped me of my dignity, robbed me of my finances, and ultimately snuffed out my life? Martha asked, raising her voice. I have worked extremely hard to get everything that I have in my life, and you believe that I will simply sit back and watch as you trash everything. I am unable to discover the precise item that you are seeking. Before Benjamin was able to continue speaking, Martha interrupted him to say, Why? She leaned in closer and locked eyes with him as she muttered, "You listen to me." Then she said, "No. I have been silent for an extremely long amount of time. I have put my faith in them to a significant degree. You have disclosed to me who you really are. And now it is time for you to deal with the consequences of what you have done." She went up to Eleanor, who was now standing with her arms folded across her chest in a posture that seemed like it was defensive in nature. Eleanor's eyes were filled with a definite sense of anger, but there was also a hint of dread in them, an apprehension that their plot was coming apart at the seams and that the facade that they had so carefully crafted was starting to fall apart. "You always thought you were such a clever woman, didn't you, Eleanor?" Martha inquired. Her voice had an acidic undertone as she spoke gently. "You pretended to be such a wonderful daughter-in-law. You pretended that you cared about me, but in reality you were plotting against me behind my back. You told me a pack of lies, and you thought that I would never discover the truth." Eleanor took a step back instinctively the moment she heard the accusation. Her face was flushed a deep red from the embarrassment and anger that washed over her. "I didn't do anything wrong," she snapped, her words dripping with venom. "I was simply looking out for my loved ones." "You were not," Martha said, her voice serene and full of self-assurance. "You were only interested in your own well-being. The truth is finally coming to light now." Throughout the majority of the encounter, Olivia had maintained her silence. However, she eventually decided to speak out. "I'm sorry," she added, addressing the woman as Grandma, and keeping her voice almost completely hushed. "I never intended for things to progress this far. I was unaware of the plans that they were making. I had no idea that it would turn into something like this." As Martha cast her gaze in the direction of her granddaughter, the expression on her face had become much less harsh than it had been before that moment. Olivia's eyes were brimming with tears, and her gaze was filled with sorrow. This was the first time that Martha had caught a glimpse of the young woman who she had previously held in such high esteem. However, this did not change the events that had already taken place. It did not change the fact that this was a betrayal. "Olivia, I know that," Martha said quietly. "Whether or not you acknowledge this, you were a member of it regardless. You did nothing as I was being destroyed by them. You just stood by. You granted them the power to be in charge of you, and it is an undeniable truth that I will never cease to remember." She made an attempt to keep her emotions under control, but her shoulders trembled as she did so. "I must admit that I did not know anything about that," I admitted haltingly. "Acting in a morally upright manner is how they gave the impression to me. I was under the impression that, if I tried my best to provide assistance to them, then I assumed that things would turn out well. However, I have finally come to the realization that everything was wrong. I offer my sincere apologies for this." There was a brief pause before Martha resumed looking at her grandchild, and the look on her face softened. "Olivia, I must inform you that I am not able to reverse the events that have already transpired. You are the one who must decide what happens next, though. You have the power to set things right. You can choose to take a stand for the truth, or you can continue to allow them to control you." "I want to make it right, Grandma," Olivia said in a voice that was shaking. "I am going to give them evidence against them. I shall talk with honesty. I will do anything that is necessary to assist you." Martha gave a slight nod of her head to respond, her heart feeling as though it were sinking. "The problem is still within your power to set right. Be that as it may, the route that is ahead of us will not be without obstacles to overcome. If you choose to provide me with assistance, you must acknowledge that your relationship with your parents will never return to the way it was before. The genuine nature of their character has already been revealed to you. Is that something within your capabilities? I am not able to find the particular item that you are searching for." Olivia stopped for a little time, her hands circling around each other in a motion that betrayed her uncertainty. "I am not in possession of any knowledge concerning that matter. Nevertheless, I have reached the point where I can no longer deal with this feeling of guilt. I must do what is right from a moral perspective." Putting her hand on her granddaughter's shoulder, Martha performed a gesture of comfort and kindness. "We will deal with this as a team after that. However, you must maintain your strength, as the most challenging thing any of us have ever been through is about to take place. Following those days were a flurry of legal meetings, paperwork, and tremendous emotional upheaval. Dr. Montgomery and her private investigator were working tirelessly to build an unassailable case against her family, since Martha had contacted both of them beforehand. Each passing moment brought Martha more and more confidence in her decision to fight back. Her family was no longer a source of fear for her. She was not going to let them bring her down. When the day of the trial arrived, which was sooner than she had anticipated, Martha found herself reflecting on the progress she had made while she waited outside of the courthouse. She had been a prisoner in her own home only a few months prior to this. She had placed blind trust in the members of her family, and had been unable to see through the lies that they had been feeding her. She was finally prepared to reveal the truth about each and every one of them. She had been preparing for this moment for several weeks, and it had finally arrived. The moment had come for Martha to keep her composure as she was in the courtroom. Her will to take control of her own life was strong, and she would not allow anything or anybody to stand in her way. In the courtroom, her family members were seated on the side opposite to her. They were purposefully turning their eyes away from her. Benjamin looked like he had not had a wink of sleep in days. He had a gaunt face, and it was evident that he was experiencing both exhaustion and fear. Olivia sat next to them with her back straight, her face pale. Her decision had been made, and she was now ready to face the consequences of her actions. Eleanor, who had previously been brimming with self-confidence, now appeared weak and uncertain. Kate Adams, the lady who was representing the prosecution, came up and delivered her words to the court. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "we have convened here today to give justice to a woman who has been treated unfairly by the very people she placed her trust in, her own family. The evidence that we have collected irrefutably demonstrates that Benjamin, Eleanor, and Olivia Caldwell colluded in an effort to commit fraud and abuse against Mrs. Martha Caldwell, who they eventually robbed. When the prosecution presented the evidence, which included audio recordings, financial documents, testimony from witnesses, and other material, Martha had a surge of pride. The whole world was able to witness the exposure of every single lie that her family had said, as well as every single fraudulent conduct that they had carried out. It was Olivia's turn to testify after the other individuals, and she took the stand to give her testimony. While she was giving her testimony, Martha observed that the hands of her granddaughter were shaking. Olivia recounted all of the events that she had been a witness to and all of the events in which she had been involved, and as a result, Martha was able to identify the source of the fortitude that she had been seeking. Olivia was finally expressing nothing else than the truth. The defense attorney did not succeed in casting doubt on the evidence that Olivia presented. The evidence was really overwhelming. The lies that Martha's family had told were being revealed to be false as the trial went, and it was becoming increasingly evident that she was on the side of the truth. As soon as the results were declared, the conclusion was arrived at in a timely manner. After only 2 hours of deliberation, the jury returned to the courtroom with a unanimous guilty decision. Benjamin was sentenced to 12 years in imprisonment as punishment for his criminal association, his fraudulent activities, and his maltreatment of elderly citizens. Because of the identical allegations, Eleanor was handed the identical decision, which included additional charges of mortgage fraud. She was also sentenced to 10 years in jail for the same accusations. Despite the fact that Olivia was given a chance to put things right, the damage that had been done to her relationship with her parents was irreversible. Her decision to remain beside her grandma and to support her in this way led her to make a different choice on the path that she would follow in life. As she was standing in the courtroom, Martha felt a strong wave of comfort come over her after hearing the last words that the judge pronounced. The forces of morality and justice emerged victorious after a conflict that lasted for a long time and was extremely difficult. The public had been made aware of the betrayal committed by her family, and they were being held accountable for their actions at that time. After a few months had passed, Martha took a seat in her new home, which was a little but lovely mansion located on the outside of the city. It was hers, truly and entirely hers, but it was nothing like the gorgeous house that she had once shared with her family. They welcomed Olivia into their house, and they spent their days together, making time to foster their relationship and seeking comfort in each other's company. Olivia had just finished her studies at the secondary school level and had just started her undergraduate work in the field of law. Her inspiration came from the incidents that had both of their lives turned completely upside down. Olivia had transformed herself into the granddaughter that Martha had always dreamed she would be, and in return, Martha gave Olivia her support, assisting her in navigating the difficult situations that were ahead of her. On a certain evening, they were sitting together in the garden. It was around this time that Martha commented, "I never would have thought that I would find myself in this place in my life. Nevertheless," she continued, "I have learned that it is never too late to start over." Olivia gave a smile and a nod as a way to answer to the previous statement. "And this time, Grandma, we are going to get it right." In agreement with each other, Martha was staring back at the young person who had stayed by her side while everything else seemed to be falling apart, and she could see the look of her grandmother in the youngster's eyes. For the first time in quite a long while, Martha felt a sensation of calm sweep over her that she had never experienced before in her life. Even though she had been compelled to abandon her biological family, she had ended up acquiring something in the process that was far more valuable: a genuine family that was built on a foundation of trust, love, and fidelity. She had finally taken charge of her life, and she was now at long last allowed to live it according to her own desires. The odyssey that Martha Caldwell was on reaches its climax with that. She came to the realization that one of the most significant realities in life is that it is never too late to take control of your life and alter the story that you have been living up until now. She went from being duped by the very people who were most important to her to acquiring power, independence, and justice. As we made our way through this emotional roller coaster, we are grateful for your presence with us. If you enjoyed this story of betrayal, atonement, and bravery, be sure to leave it a like and subscribe to our channel. We have a greater number of accounts of real-life events that are so compelling that they will make you reconsider all of the things that you believe to be true. What would you have done if you were in the same position as Martha? Kindly leave a remark in the section below and provide your thoughts to us. The excitement that we feel at the prospect of receiving news from you is immeasurable. Continue to be steadfast and faithful to yourself, and remember that the most magnificent narratives are yet in our future. We will see each other again eventually. Be careful to remember to tap on the notification bell so that you will never miss any update ever again.